services. You hear a lot about percentage cuts in the legislature. Let me just put this in perspective for you. For every percentage cut, it means 100 people lose their jobs, let alone the services. It costs money to run government. It is a people industry. In the 2009 legislative session, Utah experienced an unprecedented $1 billion shortfall this last year. Ultimately, we closed the budget gap by cutting $470 million. We had a revenue enhancement, never call that a tax, okay? Revenue enhancement of $70 million for the motor vehicle fee increase. And then the federal stimulus money, $390 million, helped fill in the rest. Imagine if we hadn't had that stimulus money. We left intact the $414 million rainy day funny money, probably. Public ed took a 7% cut. 7%, we're talking, think of that, remember? 1% means 100. So that's, there's cuts there. Higher ed, this affects Utah State University for many of you, 9% cut. And in talking to some of the fiscal analysts, there's a possibility that could be another 17% next year. Meanwhile, we have these caves protesting their taxes and their tea parties, and they're angry at Governor Huntsman for accepting it. Where were these people 8 years ago? Or even last year? Why didn't they protest last year, what was being said? Well, I want to talk about what the Democrats are doing in the legislature, because you don't hear that much about them. Sometimes you do in the Salt Lake papers. In fact, we've been very active this year. We have been much more proactive than in the past. As a minority leader, I feel like it was important that we work very closely with the House Democrats, which hasn't happened for a number of years. So you saw us meeting together. We had several press conferences. Every day, the Senate president has what they call immediate availability. So you go off the floor, and then you go meet in the president's office, and the media can come, and they're there every day. Well, I made myself welcome there this year, every day. And guess what? Eventually, President Mott said, well, come on, sit up here with us. So guess what? I was up there. I could answer questions. I try and be civil. That's one thing I really try to do. I think that's important. So we did that. We had our own budget this year too. And in our budget, the only increase we had besides the motor vehicle tax was a tobacco tax increase. And that is something that to me, it's a health issue. And my Democrats were on board with that. We suggested a $2 a pack increase. The public strongly supports it. We wanted the money to go into Health and Human Services to plug those gaps and to keep the budget, the base budget there. That we're just getting killed in some of our people with disabilities and so many of these different services that are getting cut. But the Republicans refused to consider a tobacco tax increase, even though there were some Republicans that were sponsoring the bills. And to understand why, let me just give you a little bit of taste of what it's like up there with the lobbyists. And we'll talk about the tobacco lobbyists for just a moment. I could talk about others, but one of the big problems up there is you have this incestuous relationship between a lot of the lobbyists and some of the members of the legislature and so forth. In fact, I'd like to kind of do a family tree sometime, just who's related to who. I mean, I find out, Greg Curtis is the cousin of John Dougal, and I mean, it's like, what? And they're related to somebody up here, I don't know, somehow. I guess we're all related somewhere, but that's a really close relationship down there. What you have is you have the former president of the Senate and his wife, who are now the lobbyists for big tobacco. And their son is the chair of the Rules Committee in the House. Okay? You've got former Speaker Greg Curtis, who is lobbying for tobacco. The bill to increase tobacco tax was diverted from Health and Human Services this year to the Revenue Taxation Committee at the behest of Senator Bramble, where it could meet a hostile committee. Lending credence to that conclusion was a recorded remark by Health and Human Service Chairman Senator Chris Butters, maybe you've heard of him, who leaned over to Bramble and said, now I don't have to kill it. He did not consider an independent ethics commission sponsored by my colleagues, Scott McCoy, Senator Scott McCoy. I sponsored an independent redistricting commission bill which of course didn't go anywhere. I already knew it wouldn't. And then gift ban. And we also saw some liquor reform, which I think is important in our state. And I think the governor was right to push that. It made a lot of sense. Now, I have to tell you that Senator McCoy, who I think is one of the brightest people up there, it was his idea to take there's these little stickers they would put on the liquor bottles. I didn't know this, it's out of my realm. But anyway, it costs $1 million a year to put those stickers on the bottle. He goes, hey, let's just not do that anymore. So guess what? The Republicans who were sponsoring this said, hey, let's use that $1 million. Senator McCoy's never gotten applause for that, and he should. That was his idea. It was brilliant. Now let's talk about renewable energy for a minute. This was really interesting this year. By the way, this is the sleeper issue. It's not even sleeping anymore. But this is a huge issue that will become a bigger issue as we go. I had a bill that would have required to have a model ordinance for renewable energy. So if you live in Juab County and you want to have renewable energy in your county, here's how you do it, okay? It's pretty simple, just strongly supported by all of the different groups until we got to the legislature when Chris Butters wanted to amend it to include nuclear energy. And we all know that nuclear is not renewable. I don't know if you do that, but that was really interesting. The renewable energy industry is becoming a big boom business in Utah. We have the infrastructure now, a lot of the stimulus money is going to that, by the way. We also have the right environment in our state for this. And we could become, just like Colorado is starting to become, a big producer of renewable energy. I hope that happens. According to the International Energy Agency, global energy demand will grow 55% in the next couple of decades. Now, I'm just going to mention a couple things. I was up here in Logan a few nights ago. I love Logan, so I come twice a week usually. Up at the other Hamiltons, and I spoke at the Pi Sigma Alpha group. Great young people. A little conservative, I should say. I had a different speech. But I had at the Q&A, one of them stood up and said, as a Democrat, how can you be effective? Which is, don't we get that all the time? So I welcome that, and I just said what I always say. Someone has to represent the majority. When I first ran, and I lived in quite a Republican area in the southeast part of Salt Lake County. When I ran for the House, we hadn't had a Democrat there for a year. I don't think years and years and years and years. And I worked my head off. The reason I ran the first time is I had never thought I'd run for office, ever, until Jan Graham called me relentlessly for about 3 weeks, every day, and said, we really need you, because there was a real right-wing wacko that was in our area, and I'm like, So I said, finally, I just said yes, just to get her off my back. And you know what? It's been the greatest experience that I just can't even tell you. Even running for office isn't incredible. Number one, you lose weight. Number two, you meet the most incredible people. You get to know your neighbors, and you're nice to everybody because you want their vote. How can it be any better than that? And it is just an incredible experience. You work hard, and people relate to you, and you understand what's going on, and you're willing to work hard and meet people. It happens, and it will happen here. It's already happening. I can tell you from the research I do up here. You're seeing people, the needle's not going to go from here to here overnight, but it slowly moves. And it's happening all throughout the West. All throughout the West is turning more blue. So, Aggie blue, Democratic blue.